Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with your host, Roberto Rivilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Rivilla London Custom Clothing and Footwear. I activate your superpowers through the clothing I create and the conversations on this podcast. We'll meet self-starters and creators to learn about their journeys while they share valuable lessons to help you be the very best you can be. Please support the show by subscribing, and it helps so much if you take a few seconds to leave a rating and a review. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur who spent the last 16 years launching and running 4 businesses until she burnt out and couldn't sell. But she fixed the business and found a buyer within 3 months. Now she helps business owners prepare for exit so they know the precise steps to ensure they can fix their business so they can work less, make more, and create a sellable business so they can get their big exit. Here to show us how we can make our big exit, Tailoring Talkers, please welcome Tracy Gunn to the show. Tracy, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. So that was a lot of stuff I do. I love it though. I'm so excited to be able to talk about. This is like my jam. I love talking about this.
Exactly. And I know from, just the last couple minutes of getting to know you that you are so passionate about this, which, I was really, really excited to be jumping on a call with you today. You are joining us all the way from New Hampshire.
Yeah. It's in the fall. It's beautiful. New Hampshire. I mean, I'm originally a New Yorker, so occasionally you'll hear a little bit of New York in me. You can't take the New York completely out of the girl, but no. New Hampshire is where I am right now and looking to go south, but anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Like where's south of Hampshire, like Carolina or somewhere?
North Carolina. Yep. That's where my grandkids are. So I'm looking to go down there, and that's part of why I do this kind of virtual, so I can do it from anywhere, right. When you figure out the things we're going to talk about, if you do them again, you can plan ahead, right? To not be locked in by a location or by demands. You set it up by design as opposed to reacting, So that's I'm excited to be able to share about it. So yeah.
So let's give the listeners a little bit of who Tracy is and how you kind of got to where you are today, because you got quite an interesting story, having built businesses and run businesses and then all of a sudden hit a brick wall. Just kind of take us through, kind of how you get to be here with us today.
Cool.
And some of the highlights and, maybe even some of the lowlights. And then, I'll probably jump in on you because I definitely can see some parallels.
Right. Oh, I mean, it's not so, honestly, we all feel like our businesses are like special, but there's so many commonalities between all businesses, no matter whether you're retail or manufacturing or importing or no matter what it is. Right. So for me, I stayed home for 14 years. I homeschooled. I have 3 kids who are all grown and gone now. And they all decided to go to school. And so I started my first business, and because I love business, I wanted to create this little world that I was in charge of. Like nobody else, if it failed, it was because of me, not because of anybody else. Like I wanted that without anybody messing with my little world. Right. And so I made that work. And so over time, over the next, that was 2006, 2016, I opened my first restaurant because my candy store was running pretty well without me. I was kind of bored, thinking like, what else should I do? So I started a restaurant, which is one of the hardest businesses, not to pat myself on the back. It's just low profit margins and huge dependence on staff. So first restaurant, 2016, a couple years later, started a 6,500 square foot restaurant, nightclub, dance, band, big bar, catering, that kind of thing. That was 2018. And 2019 had my first grandchild and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's amazing how one little thing can just shift you completely from everything you're in to wanting something completely different. And I don't think that is unique to me. I think everybody things happen, whether divorce or you get health concerns or grandchildren, or you just hit a point and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so that's kind of what happened for me. And I thought, I'll just sell, right? Like everybody, I'll just sell, it'll be fine. And so I hired a broker. I knew him. I was like, okay, this is cool. And he went through all my books for all 4 of my businesses. I had 2 candy stores, 2 restaurants. And when he sat down with me, I knew it was going to be bad because he was quiet. And he was like, your best bet, Tracy, is to just liquidate. I'm like, what do you mean? We're doing over a million in sales. We have 42 staff. Like, what do you mean just liquid? And he really didn't get into the details because it's not really his job. I mean, he just was like, your best bet is just to liquidate. This is not sellable. And so after I cried a little bit, I just decided, what if he's wrong? I could do this for another 6 months. Let me see what I can fix. And if I can't, then I'll just do what he says, right? But I gave myself another 6 months. And so what I found was I didn't know anything. I I knew how to run my businesses. I was working from 7 in the morning until probably midnight every day of the week. I was managing everything. Some were a little bit more independent than others, but I really didn't know anything about my end game because I had always just built willy-nilly, like, oh, I'll start another restaurant. Oh, I'll start another candy store. Oh, thinking I would just handle it. And I did. Not perfect, but I did. Um, but with no end in sight. And that's where I realized my biggest mistake was. And then I thought to myself, why didn't anybody tell me that this should have been a priority? Like, what does that end game look like? So for me, now I set the deadline for myself and I figured out, okay, my end game is I want out of here. And so I started like, what would make this attractive to a buyer? I started looking at my business differently, right? Not, and the other part I did was I shifted. I went from growing and surviving and continuing, shifting all of my focus to what can I do that is going to make this sellable? And so now I started to attack those problems, all those 16, 17, 18-hour days where my focus was on just getting through the day, right? And
Mm.
growing. Now we're focused on fixing. And so I took my big restaurant. I made some things. We could talk about some specifics, and I found a buyer in 3 months. And, it just realized like, if you it doesn't have to take a long time. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to fix everything, but just by understanding and figuring out those things, it really made the difference. So like, that's my passion project now.
Yeah.
Now that I'm out of those restaurants, and I still have my candy store because I had a partner who earned in and then she changed her mind, right? I was out of all of them. And then now I'm back in the candy store just because she changed her mind. So now I'm like letting it do its thing while I own it. But yeah, so hopefully that wasn't too rambling, but I mean,
No.
I think, we all start our businesses because we have this idea and this passion, right? And we have a plan usually at the beginning about how we're going to do it. We adapt, we course correct as we move. And then things kind of start to chug along. And we probably, most of us, I would say 95% of the people that I talk to, never think about it again, about a new plan, right? We think about like expanding, we think about growing, we think about scaling, but very, very rare is the person who's thought about how do I get out of this thing eventually, right? And whether that's, we call it exitable because, and it's not a real word, but it defines it, right? That means getting yourself out of the business. And whether you get out of the business and sell it, or get out of the business and continue to own it, or whether you get out of the business and you share it with somebody, right? There's a lot of different ways, but first step is getting exitable, meaning getting it so it's not dependent on you. Because the value of your business is dependent on how much or less the business is dependent on the owner.
And I think, from what you've said, and certainly something I've been thinking about a lot recently is, I guess, really the first step is to take yourself out and put yourself in the future and work out what that means for you. For some people, it's when they hit certain milestones, whether that's in life or the business or in life through the business.
Yep.
For some people, that's an age. So, I don't want to work past the age of 55 or 60 or whatever. I definitely want to be out. Okay, so that's great. You've worked that bit out, but what do you want to be doing? Because then you need to connect the target date with, okay, well, what does that actually look like? For me and my wife, it's I mean, she would go tomorrow if she could, but that's not going to happen. Um, but for her, her exit plan is that within 10 years she wants to be back in Spain. She doesn't want to be here anymore in the
Right,
UK.
right,
And obviously I want to go with her, but I, in my mind, haven't kind of fixated and worked out exactly
right.
what my cutoff point is, right? I know that I
Hmm.
want to get out, so I've done
Right.
that bit and I know what that looks
Hmm.
like. I
Hmm.
just don't know how old I am when that's all going on. So I
Right,
need to figure that out. And then I guess
right,
once you've got that, then once you've got the destination, you can start working out the route and looking at your
right,
business.
right. Exactly. That's exactly right. It's like how very few of us, because this is not a criticism in any way, shape, or form, but how many of us are thinking about what do we want? Most days we're just getting through the day,
Well,
right?
because we're
Or to the
working
weekend.
our socks off to
Correct.
get what we think we need.
Right.
And
Yep.
when you speak
The
to
next thing.
any small medium business owner, when you say to them, you need to take some time out sometimes, right? You need to get on top of it
Hmm.
and get yourself out of it for a little bit to kind of work things out. I'm the same.
Hmm. Yeah.
You immediately have this sense of fear and dread that comes up because you're like, I can't possibly take any time out of the business. I mean, I don't even
Right.
take time off to go on holiday. If I take a few days out of the business to work on it, I'm going to lose income.
Hmm.
How am I going to pay my mortgage?
Right.
How am I going to pay
Yeah.
this and that and so on? And
That.
what are my customers going to think, if I take time out of the business and I'm not available to
Mhm.
them anymore? All
Right.
of that and more goes through people's heads. And
Sure.
then before they know
Sure.
it, every single time they either consider or someone tries to impact their thinking to set them on the path to, they've gone through that cycle so many times that suddenly they're 65, 75 years old or
Yeah.
whatever, and they're
And
in the situation that they
that's it.
probably never ever wanted to be in.
Correct. Correct. I mean, that's so I have this one guy, his name's Don. He was in his business 52 years. Like, can you imagine 52 years? He started when he was 20 and he had built it, and he's forgotten more about business than most of us ever will know, right? He had like manufacturing, he had overseas factories, he had, I met him at the tail end of COVID 21. But he was 72 and like tired and wanting to sell and knowing that the way his business was, he finally was tired enough and took a minute and thought, crap, I there's no one who's going to buy this because there were so many pieces, right? He was doing he had factories, he had importing, he had e-com, he had retail, he had wholesale. All those pieces are really 5 different businesses.
Yeah, yeah,
And he's running them all. Now that, right? So we had to come up with a strategy for him of like, okay, what makes sense for you? But it always starts with what do you want? What do you want? What do you want now? And what does that look like? And that includes a date, that includes a number. For a lot of people like him, he wants to retire. I found this stat recently that said 1 out of 10 businesses will sell. One, just one. Okay, not great. But the worst statistic is most businesses, excuse me, 80% of their net worth is tied up in their business. So that means 9 out of 10 businesses are going to lose 80% of their net worth at retirement, where they don't have any retirement. Like, it's not a great outlook. I don't mean to be like negative Nancy here, but that's the reality.
yeah,
And nobody talks about it because nobody thinks about it because you know what I mean? Like, it's the rare business that sells.
yeah. I mean, I think there, yeah, there's a conversation I had with someone recently, and I was talking about the fact that our business has thankfully grown
Mhm.
since we came out of the pandemic, um, and we launched footwear early in the year, and that's going well, but that's kind of now becoming its own little monster that needs feeding and so on, and
Mhm.
we need to find a bigger space. We need to hire more people. I'm in what I call good chaos now
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's stretching me, and anything that's stretching you but not killing you, I think, is growth. And so I've
Hmm.
got new problems that I need to sort out. My Rubik's Cube has just maybe got a little bit bigger, and I'm seeking
Hmm.
the help where I can with that, and I'm working through it. But I was like, it's so funny because you get the thought and you think, I need to step back, Tracy, and I need to just kind of look at everything and then
Hmm.
sort of work out where I need to start moving the pieces, making the
Right.
moves.
Right.
But
It becomes the
I
filter.
yeah,
It becomes the filter why how you make every decision, right? The shoe line or whatever. If you had that end destination in mind before you started that, it would have filtered whether or not you did that,
yeah,
right? And good or bad.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
I
now you
mean,
have it. Yeah.
here's the thing, right? So the shoe business we started in, and we did think about it before we went into it. We thought, how
Hmm.
can we, because our tailoring business relies on myself and my wife, right?
Hmm.
So unlike your candy store, so you said something really pertinent earlier that the restaurant was all consuming, and I think most of us that have any sense of what goes on in the hospitality business know
Hmm.
how hard it is, right?
It is. It
But
is.
your candy store was running without you, right?
Correct.
So that if you
Yep.
out of your four businesses at the time, if you took that one, if you probably wanted to shift that one off and package it up and sell it, that was probably the
Hmm.
one that you would have gone for first.
Yeah.
Um, the problem with us is that the tailoring business is all me and her. So when people come to us, they want us. They don't want
Yep.
anybody else.
Right.
When we developed the shoe business, we did it in such a way where we went in thinking we need to build this in a way that it doesn't ever need us, ever.
Smart.
It's scalable
That's
from day
exit
one.
planning. That's the
Exactly.
exit planning part. That's exactly
Yeah.
what you did. Yep. Because you
But
learned based on what your first one or your first endeavor, right, is all consuming. So anything else you do, cannot. So when you build it, you're thinking about that.
yeah,
It can't work if it needs you, right? Because this one
exactly.
needs
That's
you,
it.
which is exactly what we're talking about, just from a further end game, right? And working it backwards.
Yeah.
If that filtered why or how you did that second piece.
Yeah.
It's the same
No.
exact. You just proved the point, right?
Yeah. But the conversation I was having with this guy also then led to something that I had never thought about before. So he said to me, so you need to take some time out and you need to step back and you need to work on your business, which means you probably need to take less clients at the moment and
Mhm.
just maybe focus on your top 20% of clients because we've done the
Mhm.
numbers. Again, it's Pareto's principle in action.
Mhm. Mhm.
20% of our clients bring 80% of our revenue profits. The other
Right.
80%, if we lost even half of them, we would probably increase our profit by like 12,
Right.
13%. Um,
Right.
so you need to get yourself into a mode where uh, you you can have that focus because that will free up time,
Mhm.
but you also need to be in a position of a level of abundancy so you
Mhm.
don't feel that you need to be there every single day taking
Right.
money, right?
Yeah.
Which is the problem that a lot of us have.
Mhm.
And he said, let me ask you this. So if you stop working tomorrow, if you shut the business tomorrow and you had no income, how long, based on the savings that you and your wife have and so on, like your net worth outside of the business, how long
Mhm.
could you two survive? And I thought about it for a second, and only a second because I know the answer to this question because it's the one thing I'm personally very, very adamant and passionate about. And I said to him, we could survive for 12 months to 18 months. 18 months we could stretch it to if we were kind of careful with
Mhm.
things.
Smart.
He fell off his chair, Tracy. He was like,
Rare.
what?
It's
Like,
rare.
WTF? Like, are you
Uh-huh.
really? What the hell are
Yeah.
you waiting for, dude? Like, you're in a position right now. You're in a position that most business
Right.
owners are never in.
Dream of. Hmm.
Yeah, you can start doing it now. And I was like,
Good.
yeah. And I knew his next question was going to be how. And I said to him, well,
Right.
since even before I started my own business, even when I was an employee, I just
Mhm.
got into the habit of every time I got paid at the end of the month, I'd put 10% of my take-home pay into savings. And my goal
Yeah.
always was to build up the magic 6 months of salary so that if the
Sure.
worst thing
Sure.
happened and I lost my job, I'd be able to
Right.
survive for 6 months whilst I found the next gig. And that's
Right.
just continued. But then when you start learning about putting your savings into the right areas so that your interest compounds and all of that kind of
Sure.
stuff.
Sure.
And you know, there have been times where I've had to wipe the bank, like our wedding,
Sure.
for example.
Yeah. But
Honey,
but
if
you
you're
had it.
listening, not you're not honey, I'm talking to my wife who will listen to this in about 5 years' time. If you're
Okay.
listening to this, it was worth every penny. Um,
Oh, so nice.
so 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 then it's just grown over time. And
Mhm.
I guess the reason I'm telling this story is not to brag. It's, I guess, for
Yes.
anyone that's listening that was nodding their heads when Tracy was saying, um, you know, when you touched on the fact that people aren't in that situation to be able to give
Yeah.
themselves the grace and the space,
Correct.
that you've got to start at some time. And
You
obviously,
do.
you know, when was the best time
Yeah.
to plant a tree? Like 50 years ago. When's the next best time? Now.
Now. Right.
Start
And
doing it.
the thing is, I mean, that you had a life habit before you opened your business that you carried into your business of saving. But we are not, in general, in a culture of saving, especially in America. It is not. And I'll tell you, like, when we shut down for COVID,
Mm,
the idea that we could be closed for 2 weeks to get ahead of the curve, which turned into months,
yeah.
obviously, but the idea that we would stop all cash flow, that's how we live. You're going to stop it for 2 weeks? Like, are you? It struck fear and terror into everybody
Yeah.
because that is not how we operate. It's just not. And so we operate on credit and cards and right. And the cash flow funds the last week and the next week and payroll. And do you see what and that's so your great habit came through in your business because it was a life habit, but that's not the reality for most people. Um, and I think about so the other passionate reason I thought about doing this was that I heard the statistic about the baby boomers who changed the whole world, right? There were so many of them after World War II that like it changed whole industries because all of a sudden the population grew so quickly, right? And, you know, those boomers are in their 70s. If they're not retired yet, they're ready. But there's number one. So in America, there's, I think, 38 million small businesses, which is, I think, 99% of our economy, right? But whatever. So 12 million of them are boomers. So 12 million. In the next 5 years, they will retire one way, shape, or form because they're older, they're tired, health, whatever, right? So that means 12 million businesses are going to be for sale. Well, if only one out of every 10 sell, what happens to the rest of those businesses? They're valuable. They're part of community. They are the basis of our economy, and yet they're going to disappear because they're not going to keep going, right? They'll work at Walmart, as a greeter. They'll do something else
Yeah.
because they're just not going to do it forever. And a lot of us won't be able to. And so we have this thing. So you have like, okay, most of them are not sellable yet. But the flip side of that is that there's not enough buyers to buy them all. So you have this, but what if only one out of every 10 sells, which are not great odds, but what if you were the one? What if you could be the one, right?
Yeah.
Knowing 12 million are going to be for sale. Why not? If you could, right? So like we talked about, like if you have your destination in mind and what that looks like for you, I mean, again, I think we are often selfless in our businesses. We don't often think about what we want. We think about what's best for the business. But I challenge that and say, okay, if you're going to think end game, what do you want? What do you want that to look like, and define it? Time, money, right? Time frame. How much do you need versus want? And then you can reverse engineer that. Who would buy it? Who are you going to market it to? And how you structure it and fix things really is kind of defined on who the buyer could be. All of those things, but having that initial talk with yourself and defining some things, even really from a 30,000 foot height, really helps you figure out the rest.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for us if, like, we go on vacation. If you can't leave your business for a couple weeks without everything falling apart, right? It's debatable how valuable
you don't have
the
a business, you have a job, I guess.
Correct. And so, I don't know if you've read The E-Myth, which is a very simple book by Michael Gerber.
Yeah,
yeah, it's okay. But when I first started my candy store, somebody gave me that book, somebody I was in a business group with, and it defined how I set up that store. Because as much as I loved owning my candy store, I didn't want to be the candy lady behind the counter forever. I didn't. I knew that about myself. I wanted to do other stuff. And because of the way I set it up and the consistency of the experience and the training of the staff to do all those things, those systems, I was able to start 2 other restaurants and another candy store, right? That base, because somebody gave me that book. But if I hadn't had that book, I probably wouldn't have done those things. So I probably wouldn't have done 2 other restaurants because I probably would have still been there, the candy lady behind the register.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess we talked about the end game, having the end game in mind for yourself. I guess we should probably talk about the other thing that we probably want to be thinking about as business owners that are looking to. While you were talking, I was also, because I have my hyperactive imagination, my business morphed into a dog. And at the moment, right. So if you're gonna leave your dog with someone for a few weeks while you go on vacation, people would much rather take a dog that is trained and does its thing outside and walks nicely on the leash and comes when it's called and is fairly relatively kind of maintenance free, like a cat. But at the moment, I know that my dog kind of cocks its leg up all over the place when it feels like it, and I couldn't give it to someone else, right? So I need to kind of try and work out all of those bad things and sort of retrain the business so that I can give it to somebody to look after and be a custodian of in the future, aka the person that buys the business. Because I would guess that a lot of investors and buyers of businesses, they don't really want to buy someone's business to then take it over themselves. They want to buy the business. And if it's something that's kind of just running itself because all the systems are in place and the people in place, they're like, I can buy this business, I can make money off it, I can just put someone else in charge of it from my team. And then I've just got something else. I've got another toy in my portfolio that's making me money. Is that a sensible way to think, to also come at this when you're trying to work out what you need to fix?
Right. Exactly. I mean, the thing is, we start often, we created this in case of emergency plan, like it's a small mini course, just to kind of like introduce people to, right? Like if something happened to me on the way to work and I, had a car accident, would my staff get paid? Would things get ordered? Would they know what to do? Would they know who to call? Would they know where to even deposit the money, right? What would happen if you just, in an emergency situation, remove me from everything? What would happen to the business? Would it tank? Would it continue? Would it grow, right? It's something to think about, and it's not something we all just believe inherently because we're optimists in general, is that everything's going to be fine. But these things happen to people, right? Sometimes people die, have a car accident, die. But sometimes, let's just say it's happy and it's okay, you had an accident, but you're going to recover, but you're out for 3 weeks. What happens? Do you shut down? Do you know, and thinking about that, or let's say it's a happy reason. You're on vacation for 4 weeks and you're in Antarctica and there's no service. Like you can't use access to Wi-Fi, nothing. What happens? That's the easiest way to start to think about your business, because you're exactly right. Most businesses don't sell because they're not really businesses, they're jobs. That doesn't mean it's a death knell. Like, you can fix that, right? You can replace yourself in your business. But remember, I talked about how many businesses are going to be for sale. The other part of that is really being creative about what the exit looks like. Because here's the thing, if you get yourself out of your business and you're making money and you don't have to work it, why sell it? Right? If you
Yeah.
don't want to do it anymore, that's fine. But what if you could bring somebody in to earn in, right? Which was a strategy we had for a gentleman who had a catering business for 35 years, right? And he was tired. His parents had started, he and his brother were running it. He said, why can't you find someone from a culinary school to earn in? You don't think somebody who graduates from culinary wants to have their own? And then you just retain ownership. And the goal is to give up half eventually. They earn and they don't even have to give you any money, but eventually you teach them your way, which you'd have to do that anyway. But now you make half with doing nothing, right? There's just a lot of different ways you can exit. And if there's not enough buyers, making it sweet and creating a creative scenario where you get the exit you want, right? It's about being open to that. But you have to be out of it to even consider those things. Or you have to at least have the plan of getting out of it, right? I mean, I don't know that you want to be tailoring in 20 years, right? Somebody's got to do it, or you're just not going to do it, right? And
Yeah.
so at some point, you've got to figure out, okay, who are we going to get in here to teach? Or whatever that looks like. For me, it was, I didn't want to be the candy lady forever, right? And I mentioned that I had, you can liquidate, which is fine. That gentleman for the catering, he didn't want to do it. He was tired. After 35 years, he didn't want to do it. And the business had given him enough over the decades that he didn't care.
Yeah.
He was going to sell the building. And he was cool with liquidating because it didn't require more from him. And that's fine, but he was making that decision from a wisdom, right? Like a educated place versus reactionary.
Yeah. And if you've managed to build your business up in a way that it has, so if you liken it in a domestic situation, you buy a home if you can get on the property ladder, and then you take out a mortgage. And for most people in the modern era, that mortgage is almost the value of the actual house itself. But then you're there for the long term. And then eventually you get older. You don't want this big old house anymore, and you want to downsize or move away or whatever it is. And so you look at how much equity you've got left, and you're like, oh, actually, I could sell it because it's increased in value over the years. My mortgage has gone down because I've been paying it off. I've got that much as a net worth or, liquidity that I can pull out. So if you liken that to the business, if you've built your business in a way where, and again, we followed the savings plan that I have personally with the business as well.
Right.
So my kind of first step in exit strategy is, well, if the worst thing happens and I don't manage to get the business to a stage that I can package it up, put a pretty bow on it, and then sell it to somebody, and I do have to liquidate, well, at least my contingency plan is that when I liquidate, the business has got so much profit sitting inside it that I can take that lump sum as like a retirement payday. And then I can go hopefully live a happy life
and do your thing
and do my thing. Exactly.
That's a different exit strategy. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you but I guess having that kind of mentality to build your business in that way, obviously the better exit strategy is to have a big exit strategy.
Yeah, sure.
But you could have that as your kind of fallback and your contingency. So I'm guessing what your guy did there, he obviously had assets in terms of the building, probably had a bit of cash in the business as well.
Yep.
And do you mind me asking how old he was? Was he in his 70s?
He was in his early 60s.
Okay, so still young.
Yeah, young enough, but just tired. Yeah. And he was coming off of, again, he had a huge catering business coming off of COVID.
Yeah.
So his numbers were way down compared to years before. So
Yeah.
it put him in a hard spot. And was he interested enough in working? But again, it's a part of working through that, right? It's working through what are the options? What are, we had another guy who he's still working on his exit, but he owned an electrical company. When he came to us, he was like, I'm going to sell to my employees. Okay, that's fine. So we work through the exit planning, right? Because that's kind of what we do is we help you like figure out what you want and what your options are. We define like what the value is right now, and then we kind of help you bridge the gap to where you want to be, right? And what do we have to do? And so we kind of build the roadmap for you to
Yeah.
follow, right? So that's kind of what we do. And so he was like, I'm going to sell to my employees. So like, okay, well, I mean, sounds like you've made your mind up, but okay, but let's talk about it. So he owned the building. Well, he was going to just put it all to them and da da da. Well, and it's like, well, okay, technically you have two assets. You have your business and you have the building. So it's two assets, right? So my suggestion would be, okay, if you're insistent on selling to your staff, that's fine, but rent them the building. Now you have two streams of income because chances are they're not going to come up with the full money. Be open to owner finance, right? You can always get it back if there something happens. I said, but now you've got two income streams for you. But second, maybe consider not selling to your staff. Maybe consider, so we actually introduced the idea of growth by acquisition so you can exit at a higher multiple. Because a lot of people, and I don't want to get too numbery because people tune out, but your value is often based on your profit level. Okay. If your business is professionally run, the multiple of your profit, of your annual profit is way higher. So if you have a profit from, let's just say zero, not everybody has profit, but 0 to 200,000, you're probably looking at a 1 to a 1.5 multiple. Okay. If you go a little bit higher, it's a 2. If you go a little higher, it's 3, all the way up to like 1.5 million profit. That's when we call that SDE, seller discretionary earnings. And that's how we figure out the value if the owner is involved in the business. Okay. If it's professionally run, that would be EBITDA. And EBITDA has a multiple, usually from 4 up to 20, 30, 40, right? It's a professional run business. Let's think full C-suite. They don't have to all be full time, but the CMO, CFO, CEO, right? You have those pieces. You're not driving the business forward. The team is. And that's your main difference. But what if you professionalize your business? Which is kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Or what if he was going to now add on. So now you have a chain. So all of his friends in the same industry retiring. So what if he takes over their businesses? Now he's got 3, he takes on their customers. Now his profit is higher. He went from a 1 to a 4 just by taking on some. Do you see? It's a different strategy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
figuring out that there's just a lot of ways to do it. So he thought he wanted to do that. And instead, he's actually going to carve up pieces and he's expanding and increasing his profit to get to that higher multiple. And so he wasn't completely bought in because it seemed overwhelming to him. But for him, I mean, that would have been an easy play because all of his friends are doing the same thing as he's doing, which is working in their businesses and they want to retire and there's nobody who wants their business. So he very easily could have said, I'll pay you over time. I'll take it over. Now he's tripled it and he could sell as a chain, if that makes sense. I just find it fascinating. There's a lot of different ways. And if you get creative, there's a lot of things you can do. And I liked your analogy about the house, right? Now, a lot of people started their businesses before they bought their house, so they didn't have as much. It's a lot harder in America. I don't know about UK, but to get a house, because you have to really show things self-employed on paper, that's different than a job. It's just harder.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't always have the house or they haven't had it as long. But I mean, but let's say you had a house and you built it and you lived in it and now you want to downsize. Would you just take apart the pieces and sell off the wood? Or would you sell the thing, right? Same in your business. Why take it apart? It's working, even if it's not uber profitable. There are people teaching other people nowadays. There's a number of people I could name off the top of my head who are teaching young people to buy businesses that are already running. Why? Because there's not enough buyers and they can get really good deals. But sometimes business owners haven't changed prices in a long time. They see an opportunity, right? Sometimes business owners have been so evolved, they haven't kept up with the tech, right? There's a lot of things that somebody could see in your business that they, gosh, if I make these two moves, that business could be double in profit, right? So there's a lot of things out there, but why not be prepared for that? I call them the sharks. They're coming.
Yeah.
Right? Better to sell than not sell, but why not sell for more if you can, right? So
Absolutely.
anyway, but yeah, I mean, I always think about it like the house. There's a lot of parallels with business and the house. The biggest difference is it's very difficult to comp out a business because they don't sell very often and they're all so different. It's hard to really, which is why we kind of go basic of, okay, what's your annual profit? Like that you tell the government. So I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry, I go on my tangents. I get very excited. I love to share. So
This is
hopefully
great.
that
Well,
makes some sense.
but here's the thing, right? Hopefully we've impacted the thinking of some people who maybe didn't
Yeah,
even want to think about this. And then
right.
maybe we've piqued the curiosity of some people who, because the interesting angle that you've given to this is that there isn't one way to figure
Right.
this out. There isn't one way to create an exit strategy. The exit strategy might be different. The path might be different for everybody because ultimately we're all different people and what we want out of life is going to be different, right? So
Exactly.
for
Exactly.
people listening who want to kind of pick up this conversation and take it further with you, obviously they can go to the website getexitable.com. I'll make sure I put the links in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
And
Yeah.
if you are starting to kind of formulate your thoughts now, and if this episode has helped you guys and girls to really kind of get a little further ahead in your thinking, or even actually just start opening up the possibilities in your mind, definitely you need to head over there. And well, Tracy, why don't you tell us what they'll find when they get there? Because you've got
Oh
some
yeah,
little
sure.
surprises, haven't you?
Yep. So for me, like I've done this for myself and we've been working one-on-one with people and we actually just started this year, like working with groups. So we started talking about, so over there are some free, excuse me, some free resources to kind of get people thinking about it because it's like a big, long conversation. If you've never thought about your exit at all, you're very far away from where you want to maybe work with us, right? So we have to like help people to get there. So number one, like if somebody asked you what your business was worth today, would you know how to value that? I would say 9 out of 10, no, right? Because
No,
it's just not something you thought about, right?
no,
And so
no.
we have a calculator on there. You can get free access to that, which will help you not only work through kind of figuring out what your business is worth right now, but it'll also explain what the terms are and how things work together, where the value comes from. Because how do you build more value in your business if you don't know where it comes from? Right. So that's one of the things. We have a calculator there. We have a free workshop you can come to where we kind of debunk some misconceptions about selling. And also, we give you 3 things you really should implement in your business to make it a sellable, valuable business. So we have that there. You can sign up for free. And then we also have our quiz over there. It's like, how sellable are you? Quiz. It takes 2 minutes, but it will kind of ask you all these questions. You kind of just answer it. And then it'll give you a score at the end of like your sellability score.
Yeah,
And it just makes you start to
it's really, really
think.
easy to use, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad. So there you go. Like it's just it's not, you don't have to opt in. I think at the end it asks you if you want to, but you don't have to. I just want people to just start thinking about it, right? Our goal is whether you work with us or not, that's fine. But start thinking about it for your sake, for your family's sake, for your community's sake, for our economy's sake. Like what we do is important for all of those reasons, right? And there is value there. And you can maximize the value, but there is value. Even if you're not super profitable, there's value. You probably have staff, right? Other businesses you buy from, they're dependent on you. Like we are all so interconnected. So when a business goes out, that value just disappears. and it impacts like a ripple other businesses. So we're just hoping to be able to help business owners to really think about making it by design instead of by default, if that makes sense. So yeah, so getexitable.com. And you can always reach out, contact us. We have some blog stuff. We have some content on YouTube. You can reach us wherever, but we'd love to help. We love talking about this. Actually, my partner, Karen, is from England. And so we kind of do this, cross the ocean thing.
Across the pond.
We're on different time. Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So she did more corporate stuff. She does this for big companies. I'm going to tell you something that I think was really helpful for me is that big companies like that are worth billions of dollars, they're not organized either. They don't have their exit. Think Blockbuster. Do you think they thought about their competitors, right? The thing is this is a business problem, not a small business problem. Like big companies, you'd be surprised how unorganized they are, how they don't have an exit plan in place, that they don't have systems in place, that they haven't kept, they do things and they don't even know why they do them. They don't have KPIs. Like we often feel like it's us because we're not good enough. And that's not what it is. It's just, we're busy, right?
Yeah.
And even big companies don't do this. So it's not about resources. It's about prioritizing, I think. For me, that was really helpful because, we have this imposter syndrome and all this pressure on ourselves that we're not doing more, we're not better, we're not further, but we're carrying it all, right? If these big companies who have, all this money and all this support staff, if they're not doing it, isn't any wonder we haven't done it, right? So if that helps anybody, it helped me a lot. When I was like feeling like, when he told me my business wasn't sellable and I was feeling like a loser. And even though I had 42 staff, right? It's just a different way of looking at it. I had to spin it, which we do as business owners. We're optimistic in general. So it takes us a little bit to get back on track. But anyway, so thank you for letting me share all this. I hope it just at least sparks some thoughts.
Oh, no, thank you. Definitely. I mean, it's definitely got me thinking. I can't wait to get my results back.
Yay!
Yeah. You'll know who it is when it lands in your inbox.
Excellent. Yes, I will. Yes, I will.
Tracy, thank you so much. I ask everybody this. Have you had fun today?
Oh, totally. You made this super easy and fun. And obviously I'm passionate about it. And you just let me ramble on. So thanks for that.
Oh, no. Well, listen, you're the expert in your subject, not me. So, it's at least 70% of you talking and 30% of me is probably still too much of me. So thank you so much. You've been so generous and gracious with your time. But, I don't think you would be any different. If you were sitting down with someone, a business owner who's kind of worried about what their journey is going to be, even embarking, I couldn't think of someone better to handhold someone through that process and help them figure it out, coming from a place of wanting to genuinely help someone, totally as true. Opposed to, a lot of people get scared about talking about this with businesses that specialize in creating exit strategies because, it's always about, well, you're just looking at this from a what's in it for me point of view.
Right. And it's also you can let your pride get in the way, right? That you're going to feel judged or embarrassed about what you didn't do that you think you should have, right? Yeah. And really, it's just bringing it to light. It just is. It already is what it is. So acknowledge what it is and let's make it better. That's it. Yeah. And if you could do it really easily without having to figure it all out yourself, why not?
Yeah.
I did it. If I could do it, anybody can do it.
Exactly. Now, my ready to sell score has just come through. So let's just share that before we say goodbye.
Oh, boy. Good. Okay.
So apparently my ready to score my ready to sell score is 70.
Okay.
Is that good?
Wow, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, so we're on the right track.
You're on the right track. Listen, nobody gets 100. It's really about just shoring up the pieces, and it probably, when you were checking off what you already have versus what you don't have, those things, that is there specifically to kind of start you thinking about the pieces that are missing without giving too much away, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just to kind of show you, there's some gaps here. With very quickly, very easily be able to see, shoot, I never thought about that. I'm dependent on even just as simple as like, are you dependent on one customer? Like you talked about your 80-20, right? If you're too heavily dependent on one contract, that's a negative, actually. It's great for you right now because it makes it easy, but it's not so great because what if something happens, right? So it's just supposed to be inspiring you to think about the category. So, well, I'm so glad you did it. And congratulations. That means you built something that's really could be sellable, and the gap is not so big, right? I found a buyer in 3 months. I didn't fix everything. I just fixed some key things, and the buyer could recognize that and saw the opportunity. That's all it is. And it's about going as far as you want to go. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. That makes me feel better.
Welcome.
So anyone listening to this, I've done it. Yeah. So now you do it as well.
There you go.
Exactly. Go to getexitable.com and take that survey. Literally, it does take 2 minutes.
It does.
Tracy, thank you so much for joining me. Let's keep in touch.
Please.
And again, just honestly, you've been an absolute delight. Thanks all of you as well for joining Tracy and I on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. You know I love feedback, so email me. And remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send this episode on to people you know who might get some help or be inspired by what Tracy and I discussed today. And if you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and you want to support the show, you can find all the links in the show notes. Have a great week. Be good to each other. And I'll see you on the next one.